Welcome back. Welcome back to Living in Mexico. I'm Ana Maria Salazar. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to thank all of you who've been joining us throughout the years. It's been an honor to share with you information, news, analysis about what's going on in Mexico, both in English and in Spanish. Thank you so much. And it's, of course, one of those very special years where the elections are taking place or took place in Mexico and is taking place in the United States. So in one way or the other, the elections in each country can have an impact on what is happening either in the United States or in Mexico. In this case, if you're following the elections closely, the Mexico is clearly on the agenda. Kamala Harris mentioned at least twice this week that as a former prosecutor, she will make sure she prosecutes and goes after these criminal organizations that are not only trafficking in fentanyl, but also trafficking in migrants. And Donald Trump's comments or has positions regarding, for example, immigration in terms of basically he's talking about closing the border will have an enormous impact on Mexico. But this week, something else happened. The Fed made an important decision, some consider it was somewhat surprising, to cut the interest rate by 0.5 point. To talk about the impact, not only the political impact in the United States, but also how it impacts Mexico's economy. Joining us today, and he's been joining us throughout the years, is Gabriel Casilla. He is the chief economist for Latin America at Barclays. He's in New York. Welcome to the show. I really appreciate you joining us today. Just the decision by the Fed was somewhat surprising, at least the fact that they cut it, that the cut was 0.5 point and not, at least I perceive that there was some surprise by the markets. Gabriel, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Ana Maria. It's always an honor to be in your show. Thanks for inviting me recurrently. So, yes, it was surprising. The majority of analysts were expecting only 25 basis points because the economy is not, there are no signals whatsoever that the economy is falling from a cliff or about to be falling from a cliff. So it's like, why do 50 if with 25 is a good way to start to adjust rates that are very high? Inflation has been going to the target and the economy is doing well. So I think that analysts and economists felt that there was no need for 50 basis points, even though markets were already, pricing in 50 basis points. So actually, the first reaction was of markets was not a good one. The day the Fed cut rates, actually the stock market actually ended up the day with losses instead of gains. However, as it always happens with the Fed, once market participants realize that, okay, regardless of whatever, this is just the beginning. It's not only it was 25 or 50, this is just the beginning. It will be an easing cycle, and everybody's happy with it. It is, a bomb that suits everybody. So now we're seeing, rally in almost every risky asset, and now markets are happy about it. No, that's important.
Now, why was, in this case, Donald Trump, so he seemed upset about the Fed's decision. The White House seemed pleased, at least the way it was expressed. Was this a political decision by the Fed?
Honestly, I don't think the Fed takes, politics as one of her, in their decision-making process. So I don't think so. I think they have the fundamentals to conduct their decisions. However, usually, it's not the same if you are starting a hiking cycle, right before an election, because then that might hurt the incumbent, as if you start easing. No, more so that usually the Fed has pretty much always created or caused a recession when they hike rates. No, right. Maybe it's not the main reason why it happens, but it happens. So, and this time is one of the very few times in history that the Fed, by hiking rates, has not caused a recession. So, and we're not in a recession. So imagine just that, and now starting easing before they cause a recession. So, and of course, a recession always helps the non-incumbent, in the polls, more so that the candidate Trump has been saying that the economy is a disaster, no? And actually it's not. So yeah, that's why I think he's so pissed off about it.
He's very angry. In fact, I remember, weeks ago he was predicting that there would be a recession before the year ended. And in fact, he made this very strange comment. It was like, I hope it happens because it's going to happen anyway, and it's better if it happens before the elections, kind of alluding that it would favor him. So what is it? What does the U.S. economy look like now for the next, let's talk about the next 12 months.
Well, the U.S. economy is doing well. Actually, GDP accelerated in the second quarter, and even in the revision, we saw that private household consumption actually increased more than in the previous print. So the economy is doing well. However, there are some signals of deceleration, particularly in the labor market. Even though we have not seen any massive layoffs or anything, the creation of jobs has slowed down. Manufacturing has been weak as well. So with these factors in mind, for example, we're estimating GDP to grow 2.6% this year and 1.6% next year in the US. So that's a 1 full percentage point of deceleration of the economy. So if the Fed starts easing right now, usually it takes. This has been changing lately, but it takes usually from a Fed hike or cut. It takes from 6 to 18 months to have an impact on the economy. The first effect on the economy in the U.S. particular is the wealth effect, no? That people see that markets go up, so their savings, their 401k accounts go up, so they feel a little bit wealthier, so they tend to spend more. That's the first effect that we usually see, and then we see the other effects, the usual ones that credit starts to increase, companies either stop their layoffs or start the new projects and things go better. But definitely this is what we have right now. But if the Fed continues cutting aggressively as they did just recently, well, maybe we'll have to change our call for a higher growth rate.
Well, then let me ask you this, and I really appreciate you joining us this morning. One last question, and this is a really important question for us, and we need to understand your answer. How is this impacting the Mexican economy? There has been a lot of concerns in regards decisions that are being made before President Manuel Lopez Obrador leaves. There's the constitutional reforms, the judicial reform. There's threats of disappearing some of the autonomous agencies that are so important for all functioning democracies. There's concerns in terms of Mexico's debt, and some statements that have been made by the president-elect, and ongoing statements made by President Manuel Lopez Obrador, who's about to leave office, and the pressures that are being created in terms of how the USMCA negotiations will take place in 2000, if it's not a renegotiation, the review then of the USMCA in 2026. How does this decision this week by the Fed also play into this, into the future of Mexico's economy and finance?
Wow, no, that was a super long question. Let me see, because I have 30 answers. For the different ones. But let me go real quick. The quick ones. So the review of the USMCA that will take place on 2026 due to the sunset clause, that's going to be tough. Regardless who wins, I think it's going to be tough anyway, more so with these reforms. With the judicial reform, then the line that divides the executive from the judiciary power is pretty much vanished. And this is something that, even though it's not clear in an article of the USMCA, the prologue, it starts saying that this is a treaty among nations that have the clear division of powers, market economies, and so on and so forth. So it could start from there up to the point as with this reform dissolving the autonomous institutions, the most important one in terms of that it's clearly mentioned explicitly is the IFETEL, the antitrust body of the telecom sector. If that's dissolved, then Mexico is going to be in clear violation of the treaty. Of course, President-elect Claudia Sheinbaum, once she's sworn in, she can create a new one, saying, okay, AMLO was right, this IFETEL didn't work, let's create a new one. There are ways to deal with that, but why? So I think it's going to be a very tough renegotiation or review of the treaty. The difference between Democrats and Republicans is, I think in Democrats, it's going to be more based upon, the discussions, with in closed door environments. And with Trump, it's going to be very noisy. But in both cases, I think it's going to be very tough. Now, with respect to the Fed, how it affects Mexico, well, it works, and it helps every economy in the world when the Fed eases rates, no? So it will help the Mexican economy. It helps the Central Bank of Mexico to continue with the easing cycle. So far, the Central Bank of Mexico has cut rates twice, 25 basis points, one in March, one in August. So for the September 26th meeting, that some were doubting that Mexico could cut because of the volatility in dollar MEX market, that this reform approval process has caused. And then this will help Mexico to be able to continue cutting rates. And of course, as we know, the government next year, this year, but they need to conduct a fiscal consolidation effort. So of course, with lower rates, it makes it easier for that to happen. So of course, this helps the Mexican economy, helps the Central Bank of Mexico to be able to lower rates that are very high, helps the fiscal situation to be able to deliver a fiscal consolidation for next year. So it is good. Now, just as a final comment, I mean, for me as a Mexican, I'm very sad that we're going back to the 72 years of the PRI era with all the power vested on one person, the president, and we know the consequences it had. In that sense, I share a lot of the sadness and feeling of a lot of Mexicans. However, as markets see it, markets don't see it as bad. Of course, they have not taken these reforms optimistically at all. But it's, so far it's institutional deterioration. As long as, you put a lot of power in one president, as long as the president is a good one. And I think there are a lot of constructive views about Claudia Sheinbaum being, significantly better than AMLO. They, making the decision-making process based upon cost-benefit analysis and not on gut feeling, open to investments, private sector investments in the energy sector, a hardliner with respect to organized crime and not adopting hugs, not bullets. So I think there are several optimistic views about Claudia Sheinbaum once she's sworn in. So I think that's what's holding. On top of that, at the end, what markets care is that the debts are paid, that debts are repaid, and so far there's no fiscal concerns coming out from these reforms, and none of these reforms is affecting the autonomy of the central bank, the autonomy of INEGI. The fact that Mexico was the first country in the world that was able to comply with Basel III, banking supervision, that in the US they have been kicking it off, and now the deadline is 2025. So there are many positive things on the economic side of the board that market participants are looking at that, and that's why we are not seeing dollar MEX at 25, because all these things are holding it together.
Yeah, there is that concern, of course, about the devaluation of the Mexican peso in this political environment. Gabriel Casillas, I really appreciate you joining us today here on Living in Mexico. You got to come back soon.
Yeah, whenever you invite me. Thank you very much, Ana Maria. All the best, and best regards to your auditorium.
Thank you, Gabriel Casillas. He's the chief economist for Barclays. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to go to a break. I'm Ana Maria Salazar.